What value does information have if it is never acted upon? In this post, we will apply the theory we've built up thus far to make a PolyMarket bet, yes, with skin in the game. In particular, we bet on the July inflation monthly, which is about the month-on-month percentage change in the seasonally adjusted consumer price index for all urban consumers, published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The bet is on how much US inflation will increase going from July to August. Cutting to the chase, I won the bet, but by blind luck. This is not a flex, this is a post-mortem on what goes into a consistent prediction system. This post is more meta than usual, as the focus is not on a prediction, nor even a prediction technique, but rather the framework in which predictions are made and judged. Before pulling the trigger, you must pick a target. The same holds true for forecasting. I decided to focus on economic variables as there is a flood of data on the topic and some theory explaining the mechanisms behind the data. In contradistinction, once-off cultural phenomena, for example, Kanye West getting arrested in 2025, are hard to place, and I see no way to get an edge over the market. To compound difficulties, small probabilities, those less than 1%, are counterintuitive. Unfortunately, there is no clear canonical rule for choosing domains of prediction, so go with what interests you and be ready to pivot when failing often enough. Assuming one has a niche, the next question to ask is whether your predictions are accurate. This only comes from following a system where you can control for as many of the variables as you can and log with sufficient detail as to replicate the past decisions. To those not of the scientific denomination, the process may seem unnecessarily stifling. However, when the dust settles after applying an arsenal of ML and statistical techniques, or heaven forbid, pure unaided gut feel, and reaching a prediction, you have to know what you did in case you hit upon the winning strategy and you wish to replicate results. Or if you lost it all and to want to stop stepping on the same rake, then you know what to do. Thus, logging choices, decisions, and consequences are essential. They are an antidote to hindsight bias and self-delusion. I spent the last 4 weeks building code infrastructure, including logging features, to force myself into tracking bad choices. Granted, the dividends will only come if I keep logging predictions and finally find out what works. Unless the events you predict are so numerous and homogeneous that you can calculate the outcome probabilities frequentist style, you're going to take a while to get enough data to tell if you're winning out of skill or out of luck. Given that you have scraped enough observations, how can you score your predictions? The most basic approach would be to count your wins, for example 5 out of 10. Next level could be how much you won in terms of money, omitting the boogie's Vigaroche. Your winnings are inversely proportional to the implied probability of the outcome. Numbers aside, money is the reason why we bet. But learning by losing is expensive. So let's revisit the numbers again, but with some more math. Brier score is a metric for prediction accuracy, first developed by Glenn W. Brier in 1950 and used by meteorologists. And it works as follows. The Brier score is simply the average of the prediction errors squared, where you take the difference between your forecast as a probability between 0 and 1, and the outcome, which is binary. Either the event happened or it didn't happen. The ideal forecaster would have a Brier score of 0 because they would make every prediction correctly with 100% confidence. Conversely, the worst possible score is 1, obtained when every prediction is wrong and made with absolute conviction. Playing the middle, going 50-50 on every bet, nets the forecaster a score of 0.25. Logarithmic score is another metric defined as follows. It is the average of outcomes times the logs. And then, of course, you take the probability complement. Here, the score ranges from negative infinity, the worst possible, to 0, the best. Clearly, the score punishes overconfident wrong predictions very harshly. where the Brier score gives a geometric flavor, the log score gives an information theoretic flavor. Regardless of which one you choose, they both are proper scoring methods in the sense that they cannot be gamed. The only way to optimize them is to predict accurately and confidently. Both can be straightforwardly extended to multiple outcomes and can often be combined in order to give a single aggregate score. Back to the US inflation data. Notice that we are taking the month-on-month change. This is a lot harder to predict precisely than the overall inflation. Inflation as a whole, we all know tends upwards because someone keeps printing money to buy things they can't afford. But month to month, the increase looks largely random. After some shallow digging, I read that unimodular methods that I use have little hope of picking out patterns in month-on-month inflation change. Apparently nowcasting methods, exploiting good exogenous data, show the most promise. Humans in general, of which I am no exception, are subject to hindsight bias and thus prone to recast past decisions in light of present information not available at the time of passing judgment. To combat this tendency, I use publishing as a means of social motivation and accountability, and as a log of my process. Even if no one reads this, I act differently knowing that this information is accessible to others. As always, if you have a problem that you would like to have mathed, consider calling the MathMerc.